Hello and welcome. In this lecture, we're going to be setting up our own little obstacle assault course, and we're going to be implementing these little pusher platforms here that will push our character off. We're going to have to implement a few little fixes to our character class in order to do this. So let's dive in and see what they are. So another type of puzzle I'd like to include using this basic moving platform component is to have a pusher that will basically push us off of a ledge. Now, the way that I want to do this is take this cube here. I think it's called Puzzle Cube A, and that can be the cube that is essentially the pusher, and we're going to configure it slightly differently from the moving platform. So let's go ahead and navigate back to our platform, so I can right click and actually click go here, which takes my camera kind of to focus on it. And then what we can do is go to our content drawer, to the C++ classes, clear my search, go to Obstacle Assault, right click on the moving platform and create a new blueprint class based on it. This time I'm going to call it the BP underscore pushing cube, like so. I'm going to put it in the root of content and click create blueprint class. Now I can close my content browser. I'm not sure why it keeps wanting to bring that one up. And I'm going to go to the content drawer, go to the root of content and search for the puzzle cube, all one word. And we're looking for the puzzle cube A. So that's this one here, the mesh. I'm going to drag in to our blueprint class and then close the content drawer, close my compiler results so I can see the viewport a little bit better. And I actually want to scale this cube up because by default it's actually quite small. I'm going to make it at least 10 times bigger in every dimension. So I'm going to hit the little padlock next to the scale property so that each of these basically scales the same. And I'm going to change one of them to 10 and then the other two will scale up to 10 as well. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the direction of movement. So it's currently moving in the X direction. And if we look in our scene, you can see that that's basically the forward direction. I want to move it side to side. Obviously, we could rotate it once we put it in the scene and it wouldn't matter so much, but I'm going to change it to 0 in the X, and it needs to be reasonably fast for it to be an obstacle that we need to avoid. So I'm going to make it 300. And I'm going to make the move distance fairly large too. So I'm going to make it at least 500 to start with. And obviously this can be then configured again once we place this in the level. So let's save that, go into our level and try and place this cube. I'm going to cancel out my search in the content drawer, go to the root of content and drag in a pushing cube. It's absolutely massive. I definitely got the scale way off. So let's go back to the blueprint class for the pushing cube, go look at the scale property, and maybe we just want to make it 4 times larger. And note that I'm doing this with this scale lock on, so I'm making it 4 times larger in every dimension. And go back into the level. And this is looking a lot more reasonable now. So you can see that it's actually clipping into the ground a little bit. So what we can do is we could either solve this by lifting up the cube in the world, or we could do it once and for all and actually lift it up in the pushing cube class instead. So I think we're going to need to lift it up by about, let's start dragging up and see what looks sane. I think about 200 puts it on the ground plane. So save that, go back into our scene, and there you go. It looks like it is correct now. I'm just going to move it so that it's going to overlap with our player. Let's go ahead and hit play. And you can see it's moving backwards and forwards. It's not moving very far backwards and forwards, so I think we do need to change that. Let's go back to the class, go to the class defaults, and make the move distance. I think it's going to need to be at least 1500, like so, and we might want to set the move direction in the opposite direction, although that could just be a matter of preference. So let's go back to our main window and drag the cube over to the left instead, because that's the direction it's going to be moving in. Let's hit play, and there we go. It's going past very slowly, so I'm not happy with the speed. Let's change that speed. I think it needs to be at least 3 times faster, so let's make it 900, hit play, and there you go. We've got a bit more of a challenge. However, we've also got a bug. Our character doesn't really get pushed in a very sensible or nice way by this pushing cube. You can see it glitches, it's not smooth. However, I would like to draw your attention to a little workaround. If I'm trying to move while it hits me, you notice that it actually does it all very smoothly. And that is because the character code doesn't actually check for collisions unless you are trying to move. So there's a little bit of a workaround for us to do this. We're going to go to our BP third person character that we've created. Now, the way you can get to this is either via the content drawer, or you can select the character in the scene, go to the details pane, go to the blueprint button and hit open blueprint editor. And what we want to do is essentially every single tick, we want to move the character a little bit to the left and then a little bit back to the right. Now, the way we're going to do this is using a component on the character called the character movement component. So select that in the components pane, then right-click in your blueprint event graph, and then search for move updated component. Essentially what this function does is it tells the movement component that it should use its character movement rules to move the character around. So you can see that it takes a delta, which basically says this is how far you should move, and it has a sweep, which tells us that it should look out for any collisions along the way. So we can make it do a very straightforward movement of basically 1 centimeter in the X and Y. It doesn't so much matter whether it moves in the Z because we're not looking for those collisions really. Then we can take the tick and drag the execution pin into our move updated component. And if we left it like this, it would be problematic because gradually our character would be drifting. Let me show you. If I hit play, you can see that the character is gradually 1 centimeter at a frame at a time is drifting his way across the scene. So what we need to do is also move back. So dragging our character movement component down here, I'm going to drag off of this pin again and look again for the move updated component. I'm going to thread in the execution pin so that it gets called after the first move updated component. And then I'm going to make the delta -1 in the X and -1 in the Y. So the end result will be that nothing seems to have happened. However, because we've forced the movement component to look for these collisions with the sweep, it's going to react smoothly to the pusher. So let's go ahead and hit play and go and stand in the path of our pusher. And you can see we very smoothly get nudged just out of the way like so. So I'd like to challenge you to make an obstacle course of your own using this pusher and moving platform components that we've put together here. So here's the example of the obstacle course that I've made in my prototype. You can see I've got some moving platforms to raise me up onto a little island. So you can use one of these islands and scale it down as a platform. And then I've got the pushers moving backwards and forwards that I have to make my way through. And then there's rotating platforms, but we're going to get to that later, so don't worry. But we've got these pushers and we've got the moving platforms. So have a go. You can try and replicate this, or if you're feeling creative and want to try something different, then please go ahead and create your own obstacle course, because that's always really exciting to see. And if you do create something unique, please share it in the discussions so that we can all have a look and get inspired. So pause the video and have a go. Okay, welcome back. So now that we've got our pushers working, let's make something a bit interesting, shall we? So I'm going to take this platform and actually rotate it around so we've got a bit more length to our setup. And I'm going to drag it along so the character is right at the end of the platform. And then I'm going to take these two moving platforms and position them one after the other. And one of them I'm going to add 1000 to its Z axis, and I'm going to send it moving in the opposite direction, so these two platforms should meet somewhere around the middle. Then I'm going to duplicate the floating island that we're standing on, so by alt-clicking and dragging. I'm going to rotate it just so it doesn't immediately look obviously the same platform. I'm going to drag it out, and I'm going to rescale it a little bit so that we can fit it on top of the other platform, because ultimately what I want to happen is that once we get on top of this upper platform, we get pushed down, so we don't die, but it gives us a bit of a setback. Now I'm going to take these pusher cubes, I'm going to actually just drag them in onto the upper platform. I'm going to put a few of them in, So I think 3 is enough for the time being. And I'm going to drag one of them over to the other side and flip its velocity like so. So instead of being 9, it's going to be minus 900, and we're going to go in the opposite direction. Let's try this out. So I can get up onto these moving platforms. They allow me to have a bit of a ladder up here. And now I have to try and get past these guys. And interestingly, I just noticed a little bit of a bug with the way that we're forcing our character to move. And I'll cover that in just a second. But yeah, it's a little bit challenging, but it is doable. We could definitely get through those. I'm not doing it very well at the moment, but we could definitely get through those cubes if we wanted to. So the next thing to do is fix that little bug. Now, the issue here is that when we've called move updated component, we're setting a rotation in here that is not our character's rotation, which means that it's always going to put us facing forwards. So the easy way to fix this is to right-click and do Get Actor Rotation, and simply pass the actor rotation in to the new rotation for move updated component. You can pass it in to both of them, but the one that really matters is that we'd be doing it for the last one. So we can go ahead and play now, and we should be able to see that we can indeed now rotate our character as appropriate. Well, great stuff. In this lecture, we have fixed a little bit of a collision bug with our character, and we've set up a little bit of an obstacle assault course for us to get started. I hope you've had fun, and I'll see you in the next lecture.